order to explore the selection tools, I'm going to start by making a copy of the background layer in Adobe Photoshop of my duck. And then I can rename the layer just by double clicking on the name to rename it. Now, to get the duck separate from the background around it, since the background is fairly simple, there are several different selection tools I can use. So this first tool is the Move tool. This allows me just to move my layer around on the screen. I just hit Command Z to undo that. And then these three sets of tools here, kind of forming like a backwards L shape, are your selection tools for indicating an active area on your document that you'd like to change, move, copy, and paste, etc. So the first set of tools for our selection tools are the marquee tools. So we have the rectangular marquee. You can select in a rectangle. If you just click and drag, it can add to the selection depending on what I have up here on my options bar. So if I click create new selection, if I click and drag, it'll just make a new one. If I choose add to selection, every time I click and drag, it will add to my selection. Subtract will take away. So those are the ones that are really important. So typically it's on create a new selection. And then another tool under the marquee tools would be the elliptical marquee. So this allows you to select in circles or ovals. So for example, if I wanted to select the eyeball, and to deselect is Command D, or you can go up to the select menu and hit deselect in order to get rid of those marching ants. So I might click and drag to place it in the center. If I don't get it exact, I can zoom in just by moving my fingers out on the keypad or on the mouse pad. So I can use the Move tool to cut that and move it. Now you can see what's going on. If I hide the background layer, there's nothing there now. So I have to be careful because if I cut that and move it and then deselect, now that's a permanent part of my layer. I can't move it again unless I were to make another selection, and then it's going to also leave a hole in my layer again. So you just have to be careful with what you do with the selection tools if you don't want to make any permanent mistakes. So again, that's why we make a copy of the background layer, so I could always delete that layer and then just have my background copy back. Okay, so another thing you can do with this circular marquee tool or the elliptical marquee, if you hold down Shift and drag, it makes a perfect circle no matter which direction you drag in. And if you hold down Option and Shift, it'll drag from the center. So if I go to the center of the eyeball, hold down Option and then Shift, it'll allow me to make more of a perfect circle. And then I can like move that eyeball around. Okay, another really interesting set of selection tools are the lasso tools right here under where it looks like a cowboy's lasso. So this allows me to just make like a general selection, like, oh, I want about that area. So this might be helpful with the clone stamp tool. So if I want to try and like get rid of this eye, I might say, I want that general area. Again, I need to make a copy of the background before I do this. And then I can do edit, fill, content aware, and then it will just fill that general area. So that's the lasso tool. If you just want to say, I'm going to just circle this like you would circle with a pencil on paper. Like I want that general area. Command Z, go back in time, Command D to deselect. Okay, another powerful tool with this lasso tool would be the polygonal lasso. This selects some straight lines, so if you have like a building or a window or something with straight lines, that might be helpful. I'm just clicking and letting go, clicking, 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 and then you come full circle, and it has this little circle indicator next to it that shows that you're closing that selection. I could also have closed the selection right here by hitting enter, and then it'll just like bring it to an end. Command D to deselect. Probably the best of these lasso tools for selecting this duck would be the magnetic lasso. So this allows you to click and place a point, and now as I zip along that edge of contrast, it's following my cursor. It doesn't do a perfect job, so if you mess up, you can always hit the delete key and go back in time a couple of steps. And then just keep going. So it takes a little bit of patience. It's not going to be perfect, but it kind of zips along that edge of contrast. So if you find later that you kind of messed up, so say I went all the way around, whoop, whoop, hit enter, I could get that back by choosing add to selection and then maybe trying it again. So I'm going to be more careful this time, hit enter, and there it added that to my selection. Okay, so that might be a good tool for selecting the duck from its background, but an easier tool would be this quick selection tool. So the quick selection tool allows me just to click on an area and it finds the edge of contrast. So it's almost like painting with a brush. So if I make my brush bigger or smaller, I can use the left bracket key to make it smaller, the right bracket key to make it bigger. So now I can just kind of like paint my area and say, okay, here is about, yeah, that's what I want. And then if I want to see a preview of that selection, I can go up to the options bar where it says select and mask. And if I display it on the overlay view, as opposed to any of the others, I can really see what I have selected. And I could feather that edge if I wanted to. I could shift the edge out, make it bigger or smaller, and then just click OK, and then that's my edge. So when I copy and paste it, edit, copy, edit, paste, that's all I have on that layer. Okay, so I'm going to go back in time. I can go to the window menu, go to history, and I'm going kind of fast because you can always just pause this or go back and rewatch it if you need to see something again. I'm going to go back in time a couple of steps with the history panel. All right, Command D, again for deselect. So that's a really good tool for selecting the duck. Another good one, since it has a very simple background, might be this magic wand tool. So the magic wand tool selects by color. So if I were to click here, you can see it all selects all the pixels that are about, 50 pixels within that range of whatever color I clicked on. So if I want to keep adding to the selection, again, I change to add to selection. So each time I click, it's going to add more and more and more colors to my selection. You can increase the range by going up here to tolerance and change it to 100. So now it's going to choose 100 pixels that are close to that one. I can also take off contiguous. So now they're not going to be necessarily touching. So if I were to click on this, it selects everything in that document that's that color. Versus if I put on contiguous, it's only going to select the pixels that are touching, that are that color. Okay, so just some little helpful hints about using the magic wand. Since I know it selects by color and the simpler color is really the background, I can just click really easily to select the background, and I can either hit delete, you can see the background's gone, or edit undo, I can click on the background and then I can go up to select inverse, and now it has the opposite selected, which is the duck, and now I can copy and paste. Edit copy, edit paste on its own layer. I can hide the background copy and see what I have. Now I have just the duck with no background. I can drag it onto a separate document and I can see that it's just kind of floating in space. It doesn't have anything behind it. So if I were to open a new document, say maybe like this picture here of a pond, I can just drag my duck up to that tab, drag it down, and there's my duck without the white background. So I can make it bigger, Command T, make it bigger, smaller, hit enter, and use my move tool to move it around wherever I want it. Okay, so that's the advantage to being able to get rid of the white background. One more thing that you can do with these selection tools, so again, I'm going to delete this layer and go back to my background copy. I also have this object selection tool, so I can just like drag around and say I want Photoshop to use AI, artificial intelligence, to try and guess what I want selected within that area. So it usually does a pretty good job. It's just a little slow today. So it's going to try and guess what the subject is from the background. So this might be helpful for more complicated subject ground. There it did. It found the head. Like if you have a panther in the jungle or something like that, where it might be hard to select the subject from the background, you can let AI try and do it. or you can go up here to this options bar with any of these selection tools up here, and you can just choose select subject. And there it goes. It just finds the duck against the background. It's probably the easiest of all the selection tools that I've shown you, if you have one single object that you want to be selected. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to the selection tools in Adobe Photoshop. Have fun Photoshopping!